Welcome, welcome.
Okay.
Um, it's been a while,
It has.
and we tried, I think, a couple weeks ago to do this, and then life happened, at least.
Yes.
So, um, where do you want to start?
What were we talking about earlier that we said we need to be recording? I can't remember.
Well, I was talking about um all of the division and falling apart of connections that have been strong, that have increasingly got stronger over the last 4 or 5 years. All of a
Mhm.
sudden, many of those friendships and connections are just falling apart, and everyone seems to be in attack frenzy. Um,
Hmm.
and I was referring to it as, you know, the deep state is at the point where they are reaching deep into the pockets of their pockets for fuzzballs to line with metal spikes to throw at us, because that is sort of what it's feeling like to me, anyhow. um that is what I was noticing, and I don't necessarily mean that I feel that. I mean that that's what I'm witnessing. And so there are a lot of people coming to me, asking me what I think, asking me if I had heard, did I hear about the thing? What do I think about that? Those people that, you know, and so trying just to kind of talk people down, get people grounded, get them in their bodies is a lot of what I feel like I have been doing, in addition to really high spikes in the Schumann that have interestingly brought to the surface. um it's always interesting to observe what comes up when that happens, and how, um if we're not grounded and careful, we can get hijacked, right? We
Hmm.
By all the frequencies that we're being bombarded with, or the programs that are running rampant. So that's what I was noticing. That's what I have been noticing.
Well, I have been staying away from a lot of videos and all of that stuff just because, I don't want to be bombarded with all of that.
Mm.
So from my perspective, I haven't noticed so much of that, but I have noticed it seems like kind of a digging in of where people are at. And so maybe that kind of corresponds with what you're saying. If there's this like aggression, that would certainly apply to people that
Did you
are
say
like
did you say progression or regression?
aggression,
Aggression.
AGG, aggression.
Aggression.
Yeah. Yeah, it does seem like people are more aggressive in defending their whatever, their stance in a number of things, whether it's their political belief system, whether it's, their galactic outlook, whatever it is, yeah, I have noticed that.
Mhm.
But I haven't paid much attention to videos or from people outside, just it's people that I know, people at work, people that, you know, I talk to.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't had a whole lot of time to watch videos.
No, no, it's definitely not. I know, I know. I've been working so hard on like, okay, what are the classes that I need to come up with? What do people need? And I didn't tell you this, but I was asked to do a an interview with Targeted Justice at the end of this month.
Okay.
And that's all about did you have you ever heard of that group?
Don't know who they are. Nope.
Well, they're actually they're like an activist group that's connected to people who have, for instance, reported Havana syndrome. These are people that have been they have identified that they are active, they have at some point, or they continue to be actively targeted by either sound frequency technologies. Some people describe it as microwave, all of that stuff that goes on that we know because of the information that we have studied in the last 5 years at least, all about the deep state and so on, and the true republic, the original history of America, the fraud that's going on, calling itself the government, all of the four-letter agencies and so on. Of course, it contains many, many subgroups that are groups who have been experimenting on the human population, and voice of God technology and all of that other stuff. So it was interesting that I was asked to talk about my experience. And you remember with one of my ex-boyfriends in 2023, how that happened to me and that whole situation. So I was asked to talk about that, and also talk about sovereignty and how that may or may not have had an impact on the fact that it didn't continue. I mean, I don't know. I can't say, but I can say that I'm not aware of any additional attacks other than an initial, perhaps, retaliation. And meanwhile, that kind of catapulted me into really focusing on different types of ways to heal, energy healing. Seal clearing was a huge, that was my obsession. Shortly after that, it was that class. So it was really for me digging in and learning ways that I could address issues within myself that were densities and blockages. So, I mean, that's going on. I thought that's really cool because that gives me the opportunity to hopefully relate to other people that have perhaps gone through other situations, who maybe have continued to be stuck in patterns like that, and maybe give them some hope or some ideas of places to go to maybe help them. So that's
Yeah.
kind of recent.
Yeah. I was listening while I was multitasking earlier. I heard something, it's like a 10-minute thing that I heard from Pam Gregory, I think, talking about this, the 15th, talking about Sunday and the alignments, and in the flurry, what I remember from what she said, because I'm not an astrologer and I don't have that language, but the gestalt of that I totally get. So she was talking about the specific alignments resulting in what feels like pandemonium, but what is actually a gift. Like that, what's the stuff that's coming to the surface. And I was like, that is exactly what I'm feeling. I'm feeling the things that I'm noticing, what other people are experiencing. And I am, the way that I personally see patterns, the way that I recognize patterns, whether they're my own patterns or patterns around me, or patterns in people or systems or whatever. But how that, hello, that's feeling, how that in many ways has felt like a gift, and that there have just been, I was at a workplace, I think I shared with you earlier this morning, that I just felt like I was in the fifth dimension, even though they were total like muggles. They were total normies. They were total like third dimensional, although higher third dimensional, what I kind of refer to as higher third dimensional, because even though it was a typical thing, typical type of job, the things that people were focusing on there, the energy behind what was happening, was just so positive, focused, and community oriented, and really resilient and fostering resilience in others, and just being so supportive that it was really quite blissful. And I just felt really lucky to go to a place that I don't normally go, to work with people that I don't normally work with, and then to be super surprised, like, oh, I knew the deaf person. Like, and there were all of these, like I thought I was walking into complete strangeness. The only funky thing for me was that I left I gave myself an hour and a half to get to a job that my GPS said was less than an hour.
And it
And I
wasn't.
and I only arrived 5 minutes before
Mm,
because the GPS kept recalculating, and
mm.
it literally brought me like 10 miles in the wrong direction after getting off the main highway. And every time I looked at my phone, every time I looked at GPS, I was like, it showed me driving through a field. It showed me
Gee.
taking an exit that I wasn't taking,
Mhm.
driving down a road, or it would indicate I had like 3.4 miles to go. And then all of a sudden it was like, left 500 feet. Like, it's like, what is going
Wow.
on? And I'm just really, I mean, I didn't get angry. I didn't get pissy. I just was like, oh my God, like, what is this?
That's
I wish I knew where I were going. And thank God I can read a map if I need to. I have a map in the
sure.
back seat, right? I know how to read a map.
That's
Um,
good.
but
Yeah.
I don't have a street map. I have a highway map, and I don't really know where
Mm.
I'm going. So, and then lo and behold, it sort of cleared out, except it took me two buildings in the wrong direction from where I needed to go. But
Hmm.
then like all of this like magic sort of, I felt like what I would describe as magic because it was just so heartfelt, which I don't think is super common.
Well,
I know that it in among certain people it is common, but I don't often see that in the general populace in the way that I saw it today. So it was really great. It
well,
was,
that's good. That's good.
yeah. And I started to listen to one of the PTKF videos
Uh,
this morning while I was in the shower getting ready. I was listening to as much of it as I could, and I felt like I was appreciative of what I was hearing in someone stepping forward saying, you know, this kind of fiasco happened, and um I believe people were lying
hmm.
about what I was doing. That was not my perception of what was happening. This is my perception of what was happening, but can we use this opportunity? Um, use it as a learning, right? Use it as a learning tool. Totally pull this apart and say, see where stuff broke down here. And to sort of volunteer to be the guinea pig and recognizing, their own mistakes or the general populace mistakes, not placing blame, so to speak, but really just being able to talk about it in such a non-emotive way and rather than just so level-headed in a way that was like, we all can truly really use this. And so I was encouraged because I felt like in the way that different assemblies have talked about miscommunications and things breaking down in the way that we're seeing a lot of things breaking down in general society, right? The people realizing that the deprogram happening or people's stuff coming up. And, we have not been taught to be level-headed, clear communicators, taking responsibility for ourselves, be
Right.
there, and we are all attempting to do things that none of us have had to do.
Hmm.
So we're all learning new tasks and trying to step into taking on roles that the government should have been doing all along, but haven't, that, way back when got incorporated and turned into something that was enslaving people. And so how do we, as kind of survivors of the worst reality, because it's just layer upon layer of fraud, obfuscation, um, uh, um, you know, misdirection, and slavery, turning the average person into a slave. The the decades and layers of that to just expect all of us to be able to function normally and to function in a really healthy way, to come together as a community, to come together as a local government, to be able to, get our pillars up and running, to just know what to do. It's kind of a shit show. And
It really is.
so how do we use the shit show that, the mistakes that we individually and collectively make without placing blame, like without playing the game that the Matrix has had us playing around name calling, around, mocking somebody, making fun of somebody, getting rid of them because they did it wrong. Well, it's a learning opportunity. How can we turn it into a learning opportunity? How can we truly, have beginner's mind for ourselves and for each other and for what it is that we are actually trying to create, so that it's not about like, we didn't do this thing and it's supposed to already be, and we don't know how to have it happen. And it should have happened 2 years ago. And we've been, treading water for how many years and it's not really moving, as opposed to like, okay, let's think logically from a heart space to truly build like the building blocks that have been set out for us, that some of us might not feel as clear, that some of us may struggle with, but keep this focus on like our children's children being able to utilize this framework in a way that's easy, clear, and concise, rather than it should have been done, last week on Tuesday. So that's what this day today for me has brought me to. I'm feeling grateful. I really appreciate people who don't go to ego when they make a mistake.
Yep.
Who truly are just like, well, it's a learning opportunity. How did this happen? Let's just pull it apart, look at it, and not do it again if we can,
Mm.
and try to see it from multiple perspectives. I just feel like there are so many state assemblies and people on the counties that could benefit from a little distance. Does that make sense?
A little distance.
Taking a little bit of distance from the immediacy and the personalness of the, everybody's taking everything so personally.
Well, that for sure.
And not everybody is doing this. Many people, several people, even if there are 20 people who are not doing this, the one or two people who are, it gets really hard when when it becomes ego, and then it becomes name calling, expectation. You always do this. You're that mentality that to me feels like higher second dimensional, lower third dimensional muggle stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Any word is a wisdom.
Muggles. Ugh.
It's just such a great word.
It is. It is. No, I don't really have much today. My brain is pretty fried.
Okay. All right. Well, I look forward to finishing the PTKF, Peacekeeping Task Force videos.
Mm.
And continued plodding ahead with the paperwork, and I guess, I don't know, meeting in a few days or a couple weeks or next week and figuring out what else we want to talk about, if there's anything that we can talk about that might be helpful.
Well, I mean, we can talk about us getting rid of the Real ID and going back to the original,
Well, we did that.
because I feel like that's huge. A lot of people are unsure.
Mhm.
The push for that started quite a while ago, years ago, because I didn't know any better back in 2018 when I just said, okay, I'll do it and get it over with,
Right.
not realizing that it was tied to this global surveillance and creating nexus across multi-state agencies and different, essentially, countries here in the United States. And so it was just a matter of us showing up at, we use AAA, right? We use AAA. They have a representative for the Registry of Motor Vehicles there. And we said we wanted to get rid of our Real ID and go back to the regular old driver's license. And so we did. That it was very easy. Very, very easy.
Easy because we have alternatives
Yep.
for identification,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, but I mean, if people don't get in, we were intimidated by the whole process, and that's why we decided we're going to try this and see how it works, expecting pushback. We actually didn't get any pushback at AAA, which was really cool and unexpected, and it was refreshing. So, we were able to check it off. We're not organ donors. We are not U.S. citizens. We are not going to step back into the, voting and all of that other stuff that goes along with being a U.S. citizen. And we also were able to sign our correct autograph and then indicate without prejudice, all rights reserved. And so that's now on record at the
Yeah.
Massachusetts Registry.
Yes.
So that was a huge win for us to be able to go through that process and come away with having essentially beaten that particular part of their system.
Yes. We also have had several wins on our counties, on our local counties, with regards to court cases being dismissed, with regards to conditional acceptances working, being successful, with regards to, I mean, I had this interaction in the last few days with somebody who was like, is that purple ink? And I said, yes, it is. And they said, well, you can't use purple ink. You have to use this color. You have to use black or you have to use blue. And I said, well, it doesn't say anywhere on here that I have to do that. And this is the color of my jurisdiction. And the response was, oh, okay.
Okay, well, sometimes they just go along with it. Other times they give you a bunch of crap.
Because the expectation is that the response to you can't use that color, you have to use this.
It
Most
is
people
okay.
go, oh, right, I do. Right. But my response was, where does it say that? It doesn't say that here. And besides, this, like, that simple, like,
Yeah.
it's part of knowing who you are,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Absolutely.
So, there are interesting little movements. Sometimes it's two steps forwards, one step back. Sometimes it's one step forward, two steps back. Sometimes it's a shit show, but basically, it's exciting to me that I feel like as more of us are comfortable with who we are,
Mm-hmm.
know our standing, get to know it more and more, that simple being at peace
Yeah.
moves mountains.
Right. And the more you know who you are, the easier it is to have that energy of being at peace because you're not going in there expecting a fight. So,
Or being reactive and being super like hypervigilant and anxiety ridden. Um,
exactly.
yeah, it's a different channeling and a different way to take up space. And
Definitely
it
is.
feels good. It's refreshing. So
It
yeah,
is.
I
All
think that's
right.
great uh kind of intro back because it's been a while. It's been like months.
I know it really has.
Um, so if anybody sees this and they have a topic that they want us to talk about, put it in the comments.
That's
Um,
right.
and we may address it to the best of our ability. Thanks for watching.
Yep.
Hit the like button, share away, and we'll see you soon.
All right.
Be well.